Eliza Winston. Essential question. What was Minnesota like from Eliza Winston's perspective? If you're totally over all these Bitmojis, sorry, not sorry. If you see this, it's time for you to read, and if you see this, it's time for you to write. Freedom for Eliza Winston. The Mississippi River had become a highway between Minnesota and the cotton plantations of the South. Hundreds of steamboats traveled on the river, carrying passengers in comfort and style. Many of these passengers were wealthy Southerners taking what was called the Fashionable Tour, a popular steamboat trip that traveled the Mississippi River. Hotels in St. Anthony and Minneapolis welcomed the Southern visitors because they were good for business. These Southerners sometimes created a problem when they brought their enslaved household workers with them. In the summer of 1860, a well-to-do Mississippi plantation owner named Richard Christmas arrived in St. Anthony. He was accompanied by his wife, Mary, their child, and an enslaved servant named Eliza Winston. Winston's duties were to care for the child and to wait on a sickly Merry Christmas. The caption over here, St. Anthony in the state of Minnesota. In 1860, St. Anthony and Minneapolis were located across the river from one another. When the two towns merged together in 1872, St. Anthony became part of Minneapolis. When Winston reached Minnesota, she knew that she was in a free state, but she wasn't sure what that meant. I learned that. Did it mean she could just walk away from her master? If she did, where would she go? How would she live? Would anyone help her? These questions were answered when she met Emily and Ralph Gray, a free African-American couple who lived in St. Anthony. The Grays were friends of Frederick Douglass, who had escaped slavery. He was an abolitionist who was working to end it. Abolitionists made up a nationwide movement of both African Americans and European Americans who sought freedom for all. The Grays wanted to help Eliza Winston become free. With the help of some white friends, the Grays convinced Judge Charles Vanderburg to consider Winston's case. Vanderburg sent a sheriff to the house where the Christmases were staying with an order to take Winston into custody. On August 23, 1860, the St. Anthony Evening News featured the story of Eliza Winston's fight for freedom. That evening, the judge held a hearing. The whole town was excited. Abolitionists were joyful because they believed the state law was being enforced. Others claimed that Winston had been kidnapped. They worried that publicity about the case would drive away rich Southern visitors. Minnesota merchants depended on the money these visitors spent. Vanderburg heard arguments from both sides and quickly gave his ruling. Eliza Winston was no longer enslaved. She was free to go wherever she pleased. Finding a place to go, however, would not be easy. Abolitionist, someone who wants to end slavery, and below, steamboats traveled up the Mississippi River as far as the Falls of St. Anthony. There they docked, bringing tourists to St. Anthony and Minneapolis. Some of the travelers stayed at the Winslow House, which stands tallest in the top left corner of this photograph, here. That night, a mob of people surrounded the Grays' house where they thought Winston was staying. They demanded that she be returned to the Christmases. Some threw stones through the windows, and others broke into the home. They searched for Winston, but she was not there. The Grays and their friends had sent Winston to a safe location out of town. It's not known exactly where she went during this time, but she did return to the area a few months later to speak to an abolitionist group. It's not clear what happened to her after that. Southerners were upset by the outcome, and tourism to the area quickly declined. Local business people such as C.W. McLean, owner of the Winslow House Hotel, were also upset. They had profited from Southern tourists and were angry at the abolitionists for hurting their business. Abolitionists in Minnesota and other northern states were pleased with the result of this case. They hoped for more successes, but they had no idea how quickly the nation would be plunged into civil war. Raft strategy. Next, you will write from Eliza Winston's perspective. You'll use the raft strategy to do so. R stands for role of the writer. Who are you as the writer? A movie star, the president, a plant, probably Eliza Winston. A stands for audience. To whom are you writing? A senator, yourself, a company? You will get to decide. F stands for format. In what format are you writing? A diary entry, a newspaper, a love letter? And T stands for topic. What are you writing about? Raft strategy, choose yours. Copy the examples if you like. Role of the writer, that's you, you're the writer. Example role, Eliza Winston. You should copy that one over. A stands for audience. What's your audience going to be? Example audience, family member. Format, example format could be a letter. And topic, example topic could be freedom in Minnesota. Now, write. Use this space to write about Minnesota from Eliza Winston's perspective. When you're done, sick. Dropbox at MNS Eliza Winston.